with understanding DEI. So in 2020, this acronym of DEI became very important. And people were building to this acronym. But the truth is, diversity has been around forever. Look around. This room is very diverse. This panel is very diverse. Living is very diverse. Inclusion is a state of mind that everyone should have, because I want anyone in this room who would not want to be included to raise their hand. Who doesn't want to be included? Included in when you were in elementary school and people were picking for teams, didn't you want to be picked? If you're working hard at something, don't you want to be considered for a promotion? If there's training available, don't you want to be considered for someone who's going to receive that training? That's inclusion. And equity is making sure that those tools are available to everyone. So when you split it out and you think about it, are we really in a post-DEI or are we in a post-catchphrase? So think about that, and that's how we're going to start our conversation. So, based on what I just said, you are from a corporate background, Lydia, and April, you're from a store frontline background. And we've had lots of conversations about how it shows up differently and why it's important. So why don't we start with the corporate perspective of why is considering an inclusive workforce very important post this, whatever we want to call it?
I think it's an interesting conversation to have right now, because while we say, to your point, post-DEI world, I think it's changing rapidly, right? And so there was a huge response in January that was one direction. And now we're actually seeing more and more companies publicize that their shareholders are rejecting anti-DEI proposals. So it's like, where are we going to land? And I think the companies who are going to get it right are the ones who are saying, okay, let's talk about our strategy, our people, our talent strategy, how we're going to market, how we're reaching our consumers, and let's attach that to our values and to what we want to achieve. And we'll worry about the semantics of what it's called and the letters and the acronyms later. So it's the people that are saying we're going to do the work. And I think that starts from your point when we talk about inclusion and being included. When you think about your workforce and you think about what you want to achieve, what different perspectives are absolutely necessary for you based on your industry, based on your customer? Do you need people from different parts of the world? Do you need people from different parts of the United States? Do you need people who went to college, people who didn't go to college? Do you need people who grew up in the suburbs, people who grew up in the city? Do you need, what different aspects of diversity are necessary for you to include at decision-making tables, for you to make the best product, create the best service, but to reach your customers in the most authentic way? And if you think about it from that perspective of what is missing, not what do we need to represent or to meet a metric or to meet some number that we just picked out of the sky, but what's missing from the table, I think that's how you get it right.
Well, I think you make a really important point when you talk about values, right? And there were companies that said their values were about an inclusive team and reflecting their consumer and how that was so important to them. But to your point, in January, backtracked, right? And so when you think about that, you think about frontline and really ensuring that there is a balance to that and there's a reflection. How do you represent that?
I mean, I grew up in stores, right? I didn't go to school, I didn't go to college. My first job was in a retail store, and I had amazing leaders that gave me opportunities at the time and worked for organizations 25 years ago that provided education and development. My school was that. And so I think half of that, then becoming a senior vice president over the time period of thinking I never belonged in the room with the executives because I didn't go to school. I had this framework where I got in that door, potentially because maybe how I sound, what I look like, where I come from. But I would say from the store perspective, the interesting piece is we hire so many people in the front line where it's their first job, young people, and we educate them and train them to have great experiences with the customers. And the work that we do now is making sure that those managers and those leaders that it comes downhill from create environments where people feel valued, where they have a sense of belonging based on how they show up every day, what they do, what they bring to the table. And that's the work that we do to make sure that leaders make them feel valued and that they have a sense of belonging at work. Because when you're working in the stores, sometimes people are coming to work from situations where they have an outlet at work, they're in a store, they're feeling valued, and it builds their human potential. And so I've seen that over decades of just working with stores. When I went into the support center side of the business, it was a bit different, right? Because it's not based on the daily interaction with people and how well you're being able to communicate and work together as a team. It's slightly different. So I think from the store perspective, I think there is diversity in stores. I think there is diversity of background and education and race, or whatever that is. And I think that that's the work that we continue to do. But I think you have to reflect your customer base. You have to reflect your market. You have to have diversity of thought, different perspectives, because otherwise you're not creating an environment that's comfortable for customers to walk into, right?
It's interesting though when we talk about the diversity that's in stores. There's diversity everywhere. We've talked about that. But there's some data that I think it's important to frame this up. So when we talk about stores, so for this workforce, this retail workforce, which is the #1 private employer in the country, there are 55 million jobs. And that is frontline, it's distribution center, it's the truck drivers, it's every element of this process and this industry. And if I can just take a moment of privilege to talk about women of color in the industry. So they are 32% of that workforce. It's a huge number, right? And when I talk about women of color, I'm talking about all colors, right? All colors except white, just putting it out there. And so they are 32% of the workforce. But frontline workers and distribution centers, women of color overpopulate, and this is according to McKinsey and NRF, they overpopulate at 80% of the lowest paying jobs. So you can walk into a store and you see all this diversity, but they're not moving forward at the same rate into management, into regional leadership, right? So they're frontline, right? That's what needs to change, right? And then when we look at corporate, it continues, right? So 21% of the entry level coming from colleges, we love them, their internships, 21%. And at that first opportunity for promotion that's going to move you forward in your career, for every 100 men combined, I think 72 get promoted. And then when we break that down further, Black women, it's 54. So half, just no longer important and take them off. Hispanic women are at 64. Asian women are higher at 89, but it's still not 100. So it should be 1-to-1. That's not happening. And so while you get to the C-suite, we're 5.9% of leadership, but there's an asterisk at that number because half of them are in C-suite support. But it's still reported as C-suite, but it's C-suite support. So when we talk about the diversity being there, it's there. But it's what we're doing with it that matters.
I think you bring up a really good point that we talked about earlier, which is that in this environment of weaponizing just the term DEI, it's been linked directly to the opposite of merit-based hiring. So hiring someone just because they are, insert whatever dimension of diversity. And those of us who have been in this practitioner for a while, I think we would all go out on a limb and say that's the exact opposite of what we've been doing. And for many of us, myself included, I will admit that I do think longer and harder about putting someone that is diverse in a role. If anything, I tended to want them to be more qualified than underqualified, because I needed to make sure when they came with the pushback, when people asked questions, when I had to defend why I was putting forth this person who looked like me or otherwise, they could stand that, up against their peers. So I would say that is part of what we have to combat right now, is this idea that when we talk about this lack of representation or underrepresentation that Kimberly means, that we're saying that we should just put people in roles just because. Organizations like WAC Retail Alliance exist because we're saying the opposite. We're saying that not only do we want to help people get the skills, the development, the coaching, the mentorship that they need. That's what diversity, equity, and inclusion is truly about. But we also want to support them in community so that they can stay in those roles once they get there.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about these catchphrases, so we talked about DEI as kind of a catchphrase acronym, and then we talk about meritocracy as, to me, it's a catchphrase because it has become that, because it's a myth. If we really believe that meritocracy is making sure that people are excluded, and then the people who are included are excelling on their merit, we're smoking something. Right? Because that's just not real. Reality is if you give everyone the access, right? The training, the sponsorship, and you create an even playing field, and those people who rise to the top or excel, that's meritocracy. Right? But if you pull people back and they still excel, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, you're making me think about an example when I ran stores and I had the opportunity to promote people from the field into the office. And there was somebody that worked for me, a leader, she was brilliant. And she told me that until I came along and gave her an opportunity to get into a director role and get over that six-figure number that she was striving to get to, a black woman, she said, she always used to get told she was aggressive. And I'm like, what does that mean? You have an opinion, right? And so, literally, I remember having this conversation with her where she made it to that director level and she was so excited and so happy because it wasn't that she was aggressive, she had an opinion. She wanted to share something. And when I wrote The Positive Effect, that book, back in 2019, it was because I had seen so much of that happen in the field that I wanted to provide a leadership framework for leaders to make sure that they were not using their personal judgment and biases, because we all have them, we talked about that earlier, and really not being lazy with their leadership and actually stepping up and using performance measurement statements and helping people give feedback or holding them accountable to the performance that you wanted from them versus using a personal kind of judgment statement. And we do a lot in training, and people actually have to become self-aware of when they're doing it, because I think sometimes they're not even aware of it, and that's the first problem, that they need to become aware of it. But there were so many examples I saw like that, where that's why I wrote acceptance as the first pillar. If we can accept where we are, acceptance unites us all. And then we have a good playing field to kind of start where we're at.
I think we did talk about this, and it's really important to understand the power, whether it's positive power or not, the power of unconscious or subconscious bias, because we all have that. We have it based on an experience that other people might not have been there, right? But if I had a bad experience with someone, when I see someone else who looks like that, then I'm thinking about that person. That's not fair. right? And that comes with everyone. And Lydia, I know you have a perspective on this. Please share.
Yeah. I don't think we can get rid of bias. And I think if that's the goal of your unconscious bias training, then you already missed the mark. I say that what we should be teaching people how to do, especially in corporate America, especially in companies, is to learn to not make decisions from your visceral response. So your bias is not just going to go away. It's a brain function. It's your brain creating shortcuts based on past history. And it's something that's founded in us, kind of flight or fight, right? Like us being able to keep ourselves safe. That science isn't just going to go away with training. What you do is you learn how to not make a decision from that initial visceral response. You learn how to surround yourself with people who think differently than you do, so you can have other perspectives coming into your mindset when you're forced to make a decision. So if you think about taking that approach, as we think about what is this, next evolution of this work look like, it's those types of comments where we're not hiring that person because they're not a good culture fit. What does culture fit even mean, right? How do you define culture fit? And again, going back to the question before, what groups are we naturally excluding based on this definition of culture fit that we've come up with? Maybe we need to reassess the definition. Maybe we need to take that out of our conversations when it comes to hiring altogether to ensure that we are truly looking at a fair group of talent and who's best for the role, who's going to come in and contribute something that's going to help our organization to grow. So I think it's assessing bias, but it's challenging yourself to remove those phrases, those things that just come so naturally that actually are excluding people.
I mean, we've been talking about this obviously because we were coming up here on the stage, and I was sharing earlier that I had a moment in the pandemic. Can I share that? Yeah. So my kids are biracial. The world would call them black, right? And people can make assumptions about me when they see me with them that they're shocked of it. But I had this moment. I was standing in the post office in line. I was looking around all the marketing, and all the marketing had all different people of color. Asian, all different races, no white person. And I was standing there looking at it, and I had this moment, wow, is this how it feels to be in a place where you don't see yourself? And I walked out and I called my best friend. She's Jamaican, British, she's amazing. And I said, is that how you feel? And she said, yeah. And I said, is that how my kids feel? And she said, yeah. I went, wow, we got a lot of work to do. But I think it took that moment for me to see it and have a self-reflective moment and kind of embody it to feel like, okay, this is the work we need to continue, regardless of what a catchphrase is. It's about that inclusiveness. And I think too many of us walk around the world with our eyes closed and more focused on what's in it for me. Because the human nature is, what's more important to me? And we've got to stop doing that. We've got to really look around us and connect with people as humans and kind of make that find like we're, just pay attention to it, be aware. And I think that brought up some things for me that I wasn't even aware of. Like you say, it's subconscious.
But I think that's such a great example because you take that back and you play it and you think about, let's use beauty brands right now, super popular. How many conversations are being had around at beauty brands, at tables, where there's not a person at that table who has ever experienced trying to purchase a concealer, their shade, that actually works, that they don't have to mix 2 and 3 different shades together to be able to match their skin, right? So you think about the fact that there are meetings happening where people are trying to come up with the next best thing or figure out the marketing campaign or how do we reach different consumers, and you're having them at a table with a huge group in the marketplace that is missing. So that's the practical example of what we're talking about. It's not for sake of numbers or metrics. It's to say, how can we possibly be coming up with the best solution to meet our customers' needs if we have perspectives that are not represented. And if they're not represented, with the team in-house, then you have consultants, you have agencies who you're partnering with to bring that, going out and getting data. But far too often, people are missing out on those important perspectives when they're coming up with what's the next best thing.
Well, I think speaking to customers, right, and understanding your customer, there's an internal and an external. And so you're speaking about external and making sure that we're reflective of that. But we also look at our internal customer and understand, what's important to them. The people you're hiring, the people who are coming in to work for you, what's important to them, right? And is it important to you to have a team that you can retain, right? And they have talent surrounding them that is going to help them grow? I know you feel especially passionate about this, April.
I do, because I spend so much time with leaders and brands now, like training them. That's what we do. We have a training company and we train leadership skills and we train them how to retain people. And it's not that complicated, but it is. Because leadership and the impact and the ripple of leadership on people, we've all had a bad boss, right? We've all had an experience where we've had somebody that didn't inspire us, didn't make us feel valued, didn't see us. And that is the metric of what makes people turn over. So I'm super passionate about this, and the work that we do, the first piece of it is awareness. It's like we say to people, when everybody's agreeing with you in the room, it's not because they're necessarily agreeing with you, it's because you have a title and they have some element of fear that their job could be gone because of you, right? That opens up a whole discussion. Okay, so let's get that off the table. Now let's talk about how we really connect with people, how we really value people, so you can really see people. And again, it's like people that say, oh, there's no good people out there. I'm like, there's tons of good people. You're not actually looking for them or creating an environment where they want to be,
Once you find them, the evaluation is very important. Right? How are you evaluating those people that make you, A, think there aren't good people out there, but B, once you get the good people, how are you evaluating them? What personal perspective are you bringing to that evaluation? I think, when I was studying at Stanford, there was this, it was like a study, and it was Silicon Valley, and they had a group, it was the same project, but they did one group, and it was regular, right? They looked at resumes, they wanted to know what schools you went to, who were your connections, who were you, and they chose a team based on that. And there was another group where they took out what school you went to, and it was really all about the skills you brought to the table and the experience. And they chose teams, same size, same case study. And the team that was chosen without the schools, without the affiliations, and just the skills and the experience that they brought to the team was the most diverse, which we would know that, right? But the most diverse and the more successful team. And the solutions that they came up with were 50%, in some cases 50% more successful than the team that would traditionally have been considered the best team. And so when you think about that, and then you think about you're aggressive, right? Or you think of some of those other things that are just personally, then we are really not doing a good job, and which we know we're not. So here's to the flip side of that. What are your tactical, right? What are your takeaways for everyone here so that we can start doing a better job?
I'm going to say, first of all, stop making assumptions. Stop making assumptions and ask more questions. We make assumptions all day about who somebody is, what they're capable of, what their background was, what their schooling was. Check yourself. How many assumptions are you making about people when you walk around all day? So ask yourself, am I making assumptions about this person? And what are the facts about it? What have they shown? What have they demonstrated? What have they proved? So stop making assumptions, asking more questions. 100%. That's one of the number one takeaways in our training, that they're like, wow, I didn't realize I made that many assumptions all day. So that is a key one. Number two, if you are a leader and you lead a team, stop using good, bad, like, dislike when you're describing people's performance. it's lazy language, it's lazy feedback. I really liked the way somebody did that. That's personal. Talk about what they did, why it mattered, how it impacted performance, how it drove the results. When you are a leader and you talk about somebody's performance, it matters. Other people hear that. You can make somebody's career, you can derail somebody's career, because once you plant a seed about somebody in a room, everybody remembers that, right? That first impression. So when you're talking about people's performance, make sure that you're describing exactly what it is and relate it to the performance metrics that you're trying to go after. So that's my best advice. Check yourself if you're making assumptions and you're using good, like, dislike, bad in these performance feedback discussions. Try and find other ways to describe somebody's performance that is related to what they're being measured on.
I would say if your organization has not already, think about evolving your language. And I say evolve because it's not to take away every word that gives any hint to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's to do the exercise and do the work of asking yourself the questions: how does this connect to our values? How does this connect to what we want to achieve? Our target audience, the ideal, associates or employees. How is all of this connected? And ultimately, the goal is to take culture and inclusion and translate that into a business strategy that is helping you to drive revenue and brand equity. So if you don't have the people internally to do that, then there are plenty of folks around the room, I'm sure, that are consultants and doing the work, right? We are here to help. But the first step is to do that work, to evolve that language. Not so much just to say that you have a business case for it. There's data out there, and Kimberly can share all of the data in the world. She has every study, all of the data that shows, why diverse teams are better and everything else. They financially outperform their peers. We've had that data for years. So it's not the business case, a standard. It's translating that to your business, making that unique to your business. And if you go out there and you look on LinkedIn, the companies and the CEOs that have doubled down, it's because they have identified how this work helps support their business. So if you've not done that, that's number one. That takes work and time and effort, but that makes a huge impact. And then the second thing that I would say is, from a people and talent standpoint, start thinking higher up in the funnel. If you are at a place with your talent strategy or recruiting and you are down to the hiring decision, you're too late. You've got to start thinking about, how do we expose our hiring managers and leaders, not the recruiters. I'm talking about the people that are making the hiring decisions. How do you expose them to different types of people? If their LinkedIn profile is all a bunch of people that look like them and they're only in orgs with people that look like them, you've already missed the opportunity. They should be coming to happy hours with WAPRA. They should be, attending different events and out there meeting people that don't look like them before a role comes open and they have to make a hiring decision.
So thank you for that. Thank you for mentioning WAPRA, and I'll just close with this. So WAP Retail Alliance is an organization that's about inclusion. It was founded by women of color who are in the retail industry for everyone. And what I'm most proud about the organization is that there has not been one workshop, one event, or one webinar or meeting that has been homogenous. We have women, we have men, we have every race, creed, ability that shows up because, you know why? Because they know that they'll be welcome and that they will be treated like they belong, and they will meet someone that they didn't know before they walked in, and it will make a difference. And so I'm really proud to be the leader of that organization and to bring that message to you. We actually have a booth come by and we'll tell you all about it, but I'm going to leave us with our tagline: we should know each other. So thank you so much for your time.